Matty Curtis, how are you?
Yes, good. Thanks, Marty. And you?
Yeah, good. Last time we chatted, I think was April, wasn't it?
Well, who knows? I
Or
mean,
even
the days, as they keep saying in COVID-19, they're blurring into one another. And yes, possibly. Yes.
what's happened then? How your Manly going?
Look, Manly's gone for this year. Since we lost Tom Trebojevic, we're not a one-man team, but it's awfully close because we lost our main strike player. Then we got a lot of injuries, which is not as an excuse. Even Des Hasler said today that, that's no excuse, and it isn't. But we've got very thin troops on the ground. We're not playing well. We've got a couple of really top-line players out. So you just can't hope to do well these days. It's too competitive, and that's not really a slight on us, even though we're not going very well. I don't think we'll even make the 8. It shows you just how professional it is these days. And they say rugby league's a game of inches. Well, I reckon winning a comp or even making the final is, a game, if you like, of margins, and they're really small. You only have to get 1 or 2 injuries, 1 or 2 bad calls, which we've had this year as well, and it can make the difference of 4 points in a competition, which might mean making the semis, making the playoffs, or not. And we haven't been able to take a trick on any one of those. And it's the old story, a bit like the Bulldogs. They've played some good games this year. When your luck's out in sport, it's right out.
Well, speaking of the Bulldogs, Melbourne are about to score in the corner, so that's going to be 18-0 if they convert it, watching it over there. So there you go. Since we've been talking, they've scored 18 points, and the game's only a few minutes old. Amazing.
Well, credit to Melbourne because they are, I'm not a Melbourne fan in the sense that I don't follow them at all, but talk about being well drilled and well skilled. They've been the benchmark for about 10 years because it doesn't matter who they put on the park. And yes, they've got good players. They just keep coming up with the goods. And, that's why they perform at that level so consistently. So you've got to take your hat off to them in that way.
Well, actually, you're interesting. It's interesting point there. One of my friends, he's the guy I want to get on with you and me to talk about football, because between him and the Storm, you and Manly and me and Parramatta. So hopefully he's going to listen to this. I'll make sure I put this up and flag it so he can listen to the conversation. He might join us later on. You'll love him. He is a supporter, and on Facebook, straight after each game, he puts up all this witty, lyrical sort of stuff about how good Storm are in their winning book, actually.
Right. Okay. Well, I like anything that's got a bit of sense of humour in it, and you always seem to get a reaction when you're a Manly supporter. I just can't work out to this day. Well, I think it's, a bit of old folklore with, the silver tails and the fibros, but Manly certainly wasn't that when they started, and we're not that today. We're not even close to one of the wealthiest clubs, but I guess out of that, thanks to Roy Masters, who was a bit of a marketing genius at the time, he established the myth that, we were made of money and a good team to hate. So, every other team would like to go against you. You're the most hated team in the comp. And it's for no other reason than Roy Masters and his clever marketing campaign, really. Good on you, Roy.
Well, it's 16-0 now to the Storm against Canterbury, 23 minutes in. You know what's different about the season this year, Matt? Other players that don't make the 17 not getting game time. And I reckon the team that sort of puts people on the park bench for a while makes a difference. Like resting Cameron Smith, I think, West Tigers have done it by shuffling. Have done it as well. They're given the captain a bit of a break, though he's probably injured as well. So I reckon the smart ones are going to be the ones that have a bit of depth, because as an injury comes through, like you're experiencing with the brothers and things like that, it's a nightmare.
Well, I think you're right. And there's a few other elements this year. They keep saying in the year of COVID-19, the asterisk year for the premiership, which I don't think it is. I just think it's a whole lot harder for everybody. So whoever does win it, it's going to be awesome. You should be getting a huge tick at the end of it, not an asterisk like, you were lucky to win it, because, there's no reserve grade. There's no other teams for players to become match fit. Teams are down so much in depth. They're loaning players, which has been a good development this year. But also in that you're bringing in young kids that just don't have that first grade experience. And some kids are doing it well and doing it well for their clubs, and other clubs aren't because they just don't have that depth and experience. Because, you know, imagine coming into a game against Marty Kapow, as I like to call him. Like, you just get smashed into oblivion. Like, you know, who would you think you are? You could be 10 foot tall and bulletproof, but you'd probably need to be to even survive a game. So I think the coaching staff that makes the better decisions off field this year, that's going to be as important, which you're alluding to, as anything that happens on the field.
So tell me, what do you think of they'll be in the top 4? I don't think they'll get through the grand final, because I just don't think they finished it off well enough.
Now, some of that cut out. You asked me about a team in the top 4. Which team? If you just tell me the team again.
All right, I'm talking about my Parramatta Eels. I'd like them to get there, but I think it's going to be a bit of an issue, especially in the last 10 minutes. There's few against the top teams, but most of them haven't been yet.
Well, sorry, you go.
Storm had just gone in again.
Right. Well, back to Parramatta for a moment, which is the team I thought you were talking about. Early on, my take on Parramatta this year was you're the real deal, and you are a top 4 team. I don't think there's really any doubt about that, and I think you'll be there at the end of the season as well. What I'm not seeing from Parramatta is that consistency under pressure yet. It might be there, and it might play out in the finals, and if it does, you could make the grand final this year. But my take on it would be a little bit like Penrith. Penrith are right at the top of their game at the moment and leading the comp. But look how many years it's taken to get that roster right, to get their club right and administration, for them to be playing well, for there to be no interference, and all of those combinations of things just coming together perfectly. And I think they've got a real chance of winning this year. It'd either be the Panthers or the Roosters for mine at the moment, although there's nothing to say that the Storm or Parramatta can't win it. But out of those 4, I think Parramatta would be the longest odds, because they haven't proved it, you know, over a couple of seasons. And I don't like to use an old cliche or an old adage, but it's true. You almost have to lose a grand final before you win one. And this year, they'll make the top 4. They'll be there in the big games. But whether they go on with it, I'm not sure. And if they are to, it's a bit like us with Tom Trbojevic. If Clint Gutherson keeps playing like he has all season, I'd rate you a chance. But if he gets injured, or, you know, you lose 1 or 2 key players, like all the other teams, there's just no chance of making it. But that's true for all the top teams.
Yeah, so true. In week 12, I listened to the interview with Trent Robinson for the Roosters on the NRL app, and his interview was fantastic. I can't wait to read a book written about him as a coach, and Bellamy as well, and maybe even Desi as well, because he had his 400th game last night. But what he talked about was, he said, I don't care if we have a bad game, but I want the bad game to go to a better game. And if we have a good game, he said, I want it to go to a great game. And if it's a great game and you're playing, I want it to go to an excellent game. So his press conference was about, didn't matter where the standard was at the time if they're playing poorly, but every time you've got a lift. So there's always a goal. There's always a benchmark. Masterclass in coaching. His interviews, I applied it to actually my teaching, Matty, because I thought of the different levels in relation to bands for my students. Band 4 to band 5 to band 6. Doesn't matter where you start, but if you're in band 4, you've got to keep working hard to get to band 5. And it was a great interview last week. What do you think of the different coaches and how they approach? It's a bit of a coaching merry-go-round at the moment.
Yes, well, I like all of your comments about Trent Robinson, because I think he's spot on. And what I like about him the most, he's probably the youngest of the modern range of, top quality coaches. But for me, when I look at him, he's an innovator. I know he's got a good squad, and good players and good heritage, all sorts of things in place to make it work well. But you still have to then be able to coach before and after that, which he can obviously do because he's won a couple of premierships. But why I think he's there, I would call him the Bill Bellyache, if that's how you say his name, of Australia, because he innovates. He constantly innovates around his team. So we're not looking this year like we are looking this year at a possible three-peat for the Roosters, and the majority of that will be done on the back of his innovation to change and tweak enough things to make sure that happens. And that's really hard. It's hard enough to win one premiership, but if he wins three, that really puts him in, just about legend status in this modern age, because it's hard enough to win one premiership over 10, 15 years, and he might do 3 in 3, given he's got a good roster. But they've had injuries too. Sometimes they've had 5 or 6 players out.
Well, the team's in rarefied air if they could go the three-peat. Now, mate, Jeremy will be very happy if that happens.
He will, but for the other coaches, I don't mind Bellyache at all, because for me, when I watch him, and I love animated coaches, there's, the quiet style of coaching, like the Wayne Bennett's of the world, and even the Trent Robertsons, they sit back and watch the game and take it all in and, make decisions and then carry on after that. But I like Bellyache because he's in every tackle, he's in every play, and when it doesn't work, he's furious. And I don't mean it's good to be furious because someone makes a mistake, but he doesn't like it, and you shouldn't. If you train all week and this is all you do, you play 80 minutes of football, and that player just drops a ball in the first 5 minutes of the game, and they're on $500,000 a year, I'd be just like him. I'd be going through the roof, and I love that in coaches. I like that passion. Ricky Stewart's a bit like that, blows a fuse occasionally, but I kind of admire that passion in coaches, and I really love it in players.
I think in Newcastle, there's an article in the paper about him as well, trying to temper his sort of reactions in the coach's box as well. So I think it makes an impact on the team if it's done selectively.
No, good point, because if you're fired up all the time, if you're upset all the time, then you can't celebrate the joy when you win or when you deserve to win, and you need to be kind to your players, even if they've lost a game. Sometimes your players actually play above themselves. So therefore, you should be able to celebrate that even in a loss. I don't mean you go out and celebrate losing, but, you wouldn't be hard on your players. But if I was a modern day coach, some of the games I've seen this year, it sounds really old school, and it probably is, but for every point you'd lose by, they'd be doing a lap in the cold weather after the crowd's gone, because when you don't show up, if that's all you do for a living and you just can't show up, it'd be out there at, -9 degrees or 9 degrees centigrade and a few laps around the oval just to remember that, and then put the effort in next week, because that's all these players do.
Well,
and I know it's hard.
Well, you know about the cold temperatures in Bathurst at the moment.
Yes, well, it'd probably mean more up here than it might in Sydney, or if you're the North Queensland Cowboys, you'd probably enjoy a bit of a lap round after the game to cool down.
Well, you're right.
Yes, mate.
Well, Bellyache came from Portland. Between you and me, I think Melbourne's probably easy in comparison.
Yes, and he played for Oberon Tigers, and Oberon Tigers are a pretty tough outfit, and if anyone's been to Oberon, it's absolutely freezing out there. And we used to play against Oberon in the under-18s, and I remember in the under-18s, they used to have a big fella that played in the under-18s called Bruce Gibbs. And he was about 18 stone. He was as mean and as nasty and as tough a prop as you've ever seen on this planet. And we're just skinny little high school kids. We would seriously pray for weeks before playing Oberon at Oberon in the freezing cold and sometimes snow that Bruce wouldn't be playing, because he would smash us to smithereens. We'd go out to Oberon on that day to play a game, and we'd find out, on the day, no, Bruce has been called up to first grade. He's only 16 years old, but he was hurting people at 16. And never mind hurting us, he'd just kill us and run over us like speed humps to score tries. And every time he played first grade, I just thanked the gods. You just got to live that week.
I got you. All right, that's enough of rugby league. Now, I don't follow the football very much in England, but my understanding, your team, Liverpool, have done pretty well this year.
Well, it's taken 30 years, and I wrote a bit of a story on Facebook some time back, not so much because it's Liverpool winning, but my point in the whole article was really that whoever you follow Parramatta, I follow Manly in rugby league or Liverpool in soccer, and I've never changed. No one could ever make me change, and I don't want to change. Now, when you're winning and you're winning a couple of leagues or titles or championships or, uh, European Cups, that's terrific. But when you're down the bottom, what I admire about every fan and every team is they don't change. They don't go, oh, well, I'm going to follow Manchester United now because they're always winning and my team's always losing. No, you stay with your team, even if it's a winning team, even if it's a middle, grade team, or even if it's a team that's come up from the lower grades. Well, Liverpool has been trying very hard for 30 years and could have won a couple of championships in that. But what I enjoyed this year, yes, winning was great. The fact that, 30 years later, the joy that it brings. And I think of that for other teams when they win. Of course, I want Liverpool to win every year if we could, but then there'd be really no point to a competition because it'd just be all about you. Like when Leicester City won it a couple of years ago, I was thrilled for Leicester City fans because they might win it for another 115 or 20 years, which is what it took them to win one title. So I actually like it when the winning is spread around, and I admire fans who stick with their team no matter what, rather than, you've always got to be winning. And I just use one form of logic in this. In every competition, say it's a 20-team competition, or like rugby league, you've got 16 teams. Every year, one team wins. So those other 15 teams or those other 19 teams, they all lose. And even though you might say, well, we came second that year and didn't we do a good job, or we got third, you didn't really. You didn't win it. But the team that does win it, that's the joy of the whole thing. And it's really hard. So I think every victory is just to be, joyful about, particularly if you have to wait 30 years between drinks, as they say.
I don't follow it much, as you know, but my understanding was that they won so many games that they knew they won it well before the end. Is that true?
That's correct. And in England, they can work it out mathematically, like with 8 or 10 games to go, that you can't be overtaken, which is kind of good because then it takes the pressure off. And usually the leading teams go on and play well. They might lose a game or two, which Liverpool did. I think we lost a game or drew one we shouldn't have. We didn't get the points, but they still finished the season in really good style. And I think for the players of that year, no matter what club it is, if you get the last 5 or 6 games without pressure and you know you're the champions, I mean, what a joy for all your hard work, instead of it even being right up to the last minute of the last day of the last game, which can be exciting, but then you don't get to savour that because next year you come back and what happens is everyone lifts their game against the champions and they try and beat you. So the second year is even harder.
So how's your own exercise going, Matty?
Pretty average. I do a bit of I do a bit of Tai Chi every day and walking on the weekend because the weather's so cold at the moment. But the good thing about, COVID-19 and being locked up in your own house is there are so many exercise options now on YouTube, not just for Tai Chi, but you can do home boxing, you can do workouts, you can do all kinds of different things. And there are so many good instructors online which are for free because I used to go to the gym. So the fact that, if you've got a lounge room or enough space in your lounge room to exercise, which I'm lucky enough to do, it's really great. You can do everything from home. And in Bathurst in the freezing cold weather, that's pretty awesome. I did like going to the gym, but even going to the gym can be, freezing in these months. We were down to -2 and -3 this week as a minimum. What about yours? How's your running and jogging going?
I've been doing as you know, I was on long service leave and I was running every day. I had 14 weeks sort of housebound and Pennant Hills bound. And then on the 30th of June, we were allowed to go somewhere. So we went to Canberra and actually visited you, if you remember, 1st of June. That's where I saw you last, actually. Yeah, called into Bathurst for a night. And then that's all we've done. But I've been running every day, but I couldn't run every day because I think I was going to get injured. So I created this day 1 and day 2 routine. And day 1 is where I would run 6 kilometres and on the 7th, 8th and 9th minutes and walk the rest, which was about 300 metres running and 700 metres walking. and that saved my body, was to only run 2 minutes of each kilometre from the beginning and walk to the kilometre day 2 run. I would basically do 6 threes, 1.8 kilometres and walk the rest. And sometimes I go to 7Ks to try and get to 7Ks in an hour. And that held my body together. So I've been able to run. But just recently, you may have noticed on Facebook, I did a bit of trail running, and I ran with a friend called Kevin, or Brick, from Cool Running, the old days. And his cadence was really high. So I've been practicing running with a higher cadence. And tell you what, you got to work. I've got my cadence at around 140 steps per minute, but he runs at 180, and it's really hard. Next time you go for a bit of a jog, picks it up on my watch, so I know. So that's what I'm experimenting with at the moment, Matt. But generally, fitness is pretty good. Touch wood.
Right. Well, look, thanks for that. Some of that cut out, but I got the gist of most of it. But what I like about what you've been doing over the years is, I've been guilty, especially in the running kind of days. I've been very black and white about it. You have to do this and you have to set times and all that kind of stuff. Not as rigorous as you, but I've liked the way that over the last couple of years, you've changed your routine to go with your physical ability and your age. So you've been able to temper it and actually build different structures, which is awesome, because even up until a year or so ago, it's like I have to get out, I have to run for 40 minutes. It needs to be as fast as I can. You come home exhausted, you're aching from head to toe. And, then it starts to become, particularly in older age or senior years, counterproductive. And the thing is, you just need to get out and you need to move. It's the old saying, move it or lose it sort of thing.
Yeah.
Use it or lose it.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
good on you for experimenting there, because I think that's the way to go.
Well, as you said, got to keep moving. And the only thing that I'm not very good at is upper body stuff. So I've got myself doing a few push-ups, which I can manage now 40 in a row. It's taken me about 6 months to get there, and they're probably technically not perfect, but they burn my arms.
Now that's awesome. I could probably do about 4 right now. I don't know about 40, maybe 14 at a good stretch.
No,
we'll see.
Right. Now, tell me that story about that sword behind you.
Okay, that one there, that was made by my brother-in-law, who likes welding and putting things together with his hands. He's an ex-fiery. He was in charge of, I think, the equipment, for want of a better term, in the New South Wales Fire Brigade, Greg Watson. And he was very good at all that stuff. He's recently retired. But because he's kind of a hands-on guy, he likes to build things. I think he was, if you'll excuse the connection, I think he was a samurai in a last life, because he makes swords.
Yeah.
But what's different about him, like, he's a genuine sword maker in one sense. The only thing he doesn't make is the actual blade of the sword. But he orders the blade from overseas, which you're allowed to do. He'll get a high quality blade made in Japan or China and get it sent over here. But every single thing else on that sword, the handpiece, the different little totems they've got on it, the woodwork that is put together in 2 halves to hold the sword together, he makes it from start to finish. And he went through a phase of making these swords for almost every single person in the family and presenting them with a sword, which is really good when you get a burglar.
Don't use it. You're getting in trouble if you use them, even if you're self-defense.
True, but the detail in it and the amount of workmanship in it, it's like a work of art, which is why it's there. It is a work of art as well as a martial arts, weapon as well.
Yeah, fascinating. Anything else new that's been happening? How's your Facebook posts going?
Well, not bad. I'm not sure what day of the year it is, but we're in August now. So what day would we be? I haven't got my phone on me.
It's the 8th of August.
Yeah, but I wonder what day of the year.
Right.
I'll have to look up a day of the year. And I decided to do a Facebook post from the beginning of the year, if I could, to the end of the year, with one story every day and not miss a day. That's with sickness, work, travel, everything, anything that can happen. Hurricanes, COVID-19, they're all there. Cold weather, hot weather, tiredness, late nights, work, the whole shebang. So far I've managed to do one story every single day right up until August, and I'm hoping to go through at the end of the year, and I just as an exercise to see if I could do it. But the interesting thing in doing that, because we've had such a fascinating year, my stories started off pretty tame and lame, I suppose. They're just daily observations about this, that, and the other, nothing too dramatic. But as the year's gone on with COVID-19, like, all hell's broken loose, and it's been a really good year to look at the things going on around us and even ask questions about it. I don't have the answers, but I like looking at what's happening to our behaviours and then commenting on that. I try and usually put a bit of a humorous slant on it, because it's better than getting depressed or crying about these things, given that no one likes the sickness or death that's come along with COVID-19. But if I get to the end of the year, it'll actually be a pretty good record of how this year started, the year 2020, and maybe how it ends, day by day, unintentionally.
I don't know how you find enough songs, because you have a song for every post as well. What's your process around doing that?
Oh, that's the best question of all. Well done. You make a good interviewer. The songs are funny. Here's how I get a song. I'm writing the story. I usually write my one story for the next day, the night before, between about like 7 and 9 o'clock at night, just when I get a space. That story can just come out word perfect in 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 15 minutes. But sometimes, just because I haven't got a clear thought about that story, I haven't seen anything through the day, or I haven't found anything of interest, I might struggle. It might take me an hour to write that short story, because I'm trying to put it all together, because I try and just do it day by day. There's no preconceived ideas. But when I'm writing the story to go to the song part, what happens with the song is simply this. Sometimes as I'm writing the story, the song's already in my mind. I can remember something from 20 years ago or 30 years ago that fits it perfectly. So before I've even finished the story, I've got the song. Other times, I finish the story, then I try and get the theme of the song, which might be, I don't know, too many cooks spoil the broth. Then I'll try and find a song that represents that, and I might really struggle. It might take me, sometimes it's taken an hour to find a song to match what I've written, because I haven't got it worked out before I start. And other times I find the perfect song by just Googling the words from it. Say you're talking about,
Yeah, what'd you do the other day? I'll have a look.
yeah, I'll have to recall something.
That's
but
all right.
I did the one. I did one for Desi's 400th, which was, Heroes, David Bowie's song Heroes, for just one day. But my take on it was this: people like Des Hasler are heroes every day. They don't just turn up on one day and put it in. They're there every day. But sometimes I do a counter song. I might put in a funny song, or I might put in the opposite of what I'm saying. I just try and find something that matches the sentiment of that story. And it doesn't match it all perfectly. It just might match the main idea.
Thanks. I'm going to pause this now. We can talk offline. We can carry on like pork chops like we normally do. Okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll see if this works.
All right.
Well, Matty, that was really good to catch up with you. What do you reckon we do this again sometime?
Sounds great, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, then. Well, thanks a lot, Matt, and I'll catch you soon.
Okay, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.